Alright everyone, welcome back to Ask the King for April of 2016. If you did not see part 1, I strongly recommend you check it out first. There was some really important information there regarding the next episode, Patreon, and the big first chunk of questions. But now, let's head right into the next chunk, alright? So the next question is from Pocho Max, and he asks the following. He says, "Hey Phil, have you ever been teased for having unpopular hobbies or interests? As a fan of anime, Hawaiian pizza, and rap music, I grew up with thick skin since I was constantly surrounded by people who either didn't understand what I was into or outright mocked me for it. As a fan of pro wrestling, I imagine you might have had to deal with similar issues, like pretentious dicks that love to shout that wrestling is scripted like it's some huge revelation. People forget that even video games themselves were seen as an uncool nerd hobby for kids up until geek culture got popular with stuff like the Big Bang Theory, but I digress. Have you ever dealt with this yourself, or do you have any advice for people going through similar struggles? I think right now there are people that are big fans of your content but afraid to show it because of the negative reputation you have online, and any advice would be helpful." Well, the bottom line is, you're absolutely right. In fact, when I was a teenager, video games were seen as nerdy. If I were to tell some kid from high school that I went to the video arcade to play Street Fighter, they'd be like, you go to the arcade, you play video games on the cabinet? They thought it was hilarious. You know, it really wasn't until, I would say, the very late 90s to early 2000s, the era of, say, the PlayStation 1, and then subsequently the PS2, was really when the home gameplay and gaming and video games started going mainstream. You started seeing video game advertisements on television and stuff like that. Keep in mind, in the 90s, you had things like the Super Mario Brothers fucking movie, you know? So, how could you, that was mainstream. Oh, the Super Mario Brothers movie, that's about Nintendo games, right? And you see the movie like, the Street Fighter adaptation movie, you know? No one took the shit seriously. And really, and honestly, it was in grammar school and high school. I say grammar school, it means elementary school. They used to call it grammar school here in the East Coast of the United States where I used to live anyway. But, yeah, like, I had only very few friends who would play video games. I had, like, 2 friends in elementary school who played video games, and we would play together, go over each other's houses and play each other's consoles, do 2-player co-op. And in high school, there was, like, 1 friend that I had who played video games. All my friends who played video games were from the arcades. Like, I would go to the arcade and meet people at the arcade and make friends there playing Street Fighter. They weren't, you know, and these weren't mainstream people who you would meet. They were from all over the place, different high schools, different areas of the state to come together to play these games because it wasn't a mainstream thing back then. And I did get ridiculed for it and a lot of shit, you know. And it's funny because he says the Big Bang Theory made it mainstream. The Big Bang Theory is one of the worst fucking shows I've ever seen in my life. And look at me. Here's what you really need to do. Look at me, all right? And look at the Big Bang Theory. Now, I'm one of the biggest fans of video games on the planet. Does that show represent me accurately? Fuck no. That show is an insult. It's an insult to people who actually like that geeky or gaming culture. We're not all awkward, socially awkward people who can't socialize, and we can't have girlfriends, and we're nerdy. We're not all like that. Just because we like something that's not necessarily mainstream doesn't make us outcasts or freaks or social rejects like a lot of this mainstream shit likes to portray people. And that pisses me the fuck off. That's the stereotype. The Big Bang Theory is the fucking stereotype that needs to fucking end and shove it up its own ass. Because that has hurt more than helped, in my opinion. That shit didn't bring stuff to the mainstream. It was when people realized there was money in the gaming market that all of a sudden it became mainstream. Oh shit. Well, we've been making fun of this for years, but we put a ton of money in developing games, and now the games are making millions and millions of dollars worldwide. I guess it's not a joke anymore, right? And that's it. People like you and me, who don't necessarily have these kind of social ineptitudes, can still like this shit. You know, and not have to be made fun of or ridiculed by fucking people. It's a bad stereotype that, oh, because you like something that's a fringe thing, you're an outcast or you're a freak or something. Now, you say, well, how did you overcome it? I mean, did I really? No, I just kind of stuck with it. Did I make it my end-all and be-all of my person? No. I still remember when I had my job at Best Buy in the mid-2000s when I was working for the Best Buy for Business team. When I told them that I was a competitive Street Fighter player, all the employees of the store snickered. Because they don't understand what that means. They don't know the time, the dedication, the actual level of competition, the sacrifice, the financial sacrifice. They don't know what it means. They just think video games. And it's ridiculous that people were still that fucking mindset. Even at that time, people were still at that fucking mindset. So I understand. I really do. I understand if there's anything in life that maybe you like and other people don't get, you know? Unless you're, like, obnoxious, because there are people like, well, I like this, and I make it the end all and be all of my fucking existence, and if you don't accept that I like this, then, you know, because there are people who just go too far, and I don't believe that making, you know, some kind of a hobby or whatever go too far. I've always been, you know, I have a professional life, I've got a personal life, I've got my hobbies, and they're all kind of separate from each other. Sometimes they intersect, but, you know, try to keep them separate so that way it's not just the end all and be all of your existence, all right? Now, you know, it's kind of funny because he makes the comparison here, and he says, well, there are people who are friends of your content, right? And they're made fun of because they like your stuff. It's the same shit. You know what I mean? Like, it really is. It's like, just because you like something that maybe the mainstream YouTube viewer doesn't like, you know, it doesn't mean that it's a generalization that it's a negative thing. I hate to say it, the mainstream YouTuber, what the shit that they watch, if it's representative of good stuff, then I don't want to be a part of good stuff. Sorry, I don't want to be a part of fucking these terrible viral videos, people who just fucking sit there and talk about the news all day and go, ow, ow, and act for the camera like clowns and do this daily bullshit that has absolutely no fucking substance to it. And that's the popular shit on YouTube. Look at the things that go viral and the things that are the most popular, and tell me for a fucking second that there's any kind of quality or any kind of value in that video besides maybe a quick laugh or making fun of someone negatively. That shit I don't want to be a part of, you know? So if you're a fan of my stuff and people make fun of you for it, be like, well, fine, watch your shit. Keep shoveling the shit down your fucking throat and become a fucking moron, right? I'm going to watch something that I like, and it's my choice in life to decide what I like and what I don't like, and you have no fucking right to tell me that I'm right or wrong or make fun of me for it. And of course, that's not just me, anything. If you like anime, if you like this kind of book, if you like comics, if you like this movie, if you like this, if you like to paint, if you like to sing and be a musician, to play an instrument, be a musician, if you like athletics, if you like that, no one has any right to tell you what the fuck you can like or don't like. And fuck their stupid social castes and shit. You know, because I know they exist. That's the truth on the internet now. There's a social caste of the mainstream, and basically I'm in the underdog, the guy who shouldn't be liked because he's not in the in group, right? Same shit in high school. I wasn't in the in crowd in fucking high school. I did my own thing. I went my own way. I had my own morals and standards and stuff that I lived up to, and I was a lot different from all the kids in high school, and I wasn't in the in crowd, and a lot of people made fun of me for it. Fuck those fucking people. Those fucking elitist douchebag pieces of shit who just, the only way they can get a rise out of life is to bully others. So because you like something that I don't understand, or you like something that I don't like, I'm going to bully you. And that's all it is. Fuck those losers. Those people are insecure. Those people are fucking lesser than you. That's the bottom line. You shouldn't ever degrade yourself to the point where you bring down others either for liking stuff that you don't like. Remember that. It goes both ways. All right. Next question is from Matthew Vader. He says, Phil, could you name some of your favorite mystery theme shows that you watched growing up? I ask because my favorite series, Gravity Falls, has ended, and I always wondered, have you ever watched those times of shows where something odd was going on, like Twin Peaks? You think you have also, would you think a Halo and Mass Effect crossover would be cool? Please don't cross over Halo with Mass Effect. No. No, no, no. When I was growing up, there's a lot of stuff that I watched. I'm trying to think of some of the stuff that I watched long term. Quantum Leap was a show that I watched for a long time, because it was sci-fi, but it also had a mystery element. What is going on with this time travel mechanic, and is there a higher power behind it, or is it actually just technically scientific? What is going on? What's determining the jumps that's making the Scott Bakula was the main character? What's determining what people he's inhabiting throughout time and space? It didn't make sense. There didn't seem to be a pattern. And I like that show for that kind of an element. I was always a huge fan of shows like Alfred Hitchcock, his stuff, or The Outer Limits, or The Twilight Zone. And although those aren't continuous series, every episode's kind of independent of itself. I really like those kind of shows. Unsolved Mysteries I used to watch with my parents, which was just a show about true life mysteries that were never solved, with over dramatic reenactments of the stuff that were hilarious. I don't think there was ever like an ongoing mystery show. When I was a kid, it was still like Murder, She Wrote, Columbo, and I was too young to be watching that kind of stuff. That stuff was the mystery stuff that was kind of popular during that time. I didn't even know Twin Peaks existed. I didn't even know it existed. Now that I've watched it as an older person, much more mature and different tastes, I love the show. But back then, as a kid, I probably wouldn't have liked it either. I really do think that kind of show is something for an older audience, someone who's looking for kind of what's going on behind the scenes? Can we put the pieces together kind of a thing? I don't think kids really look to that. You know what I mean? I think when you're younger, you're looking for more of kind of a one-off, spin-off, or, something that you don't have to invest too much of your mind into. Although I did appreciate when I was a kid shows like the Batman animated series where it was continuous plot line that would tie into it. And if you missed an episode, you may have missed out on a critical plot point that affected a future episode. I liked that. But, yeah, I don't really think I was into the thriller kind of thing when I was a kid. Next question is from I Will Break You. And he says, Phil, I would like to hear your take on the closing of Lionhead Studios and Sony stepping in and giving those who were affected jobs. Do you think that maybe the Fable franchise or future Fable titles could be coming to the PlayStation 4? No, because I believe Microsoft owns the rights to Fable, so I don't think that could happen. But it doesn't mean that the creators, the Lionhead Studios devs, couldn't step up and make a similar style game for Sony and just call it something else. The story of Lionhead Studios is a sad one because Fable, when it came out on the Xbox, the original Xbox, was a very highly critically acclaimed game, and eventually over time it sold a lot. But because it was on the console that it was, I don't think it got the mainstream attention that it probably should have. But the Lionhead Studios game devs became like superstars, right? Like everyone knew who they were. Wow, these guys put out a great game on a console that not a lot of people are playing. This is great. What can they do in the future? And then they did Fable 2, which expanded upon the formula of Fable 1. A lot of people liked the stuff from Fable 2. A lot of people disliked the stuff that was changed in Fable 2. Fable 2 was the first one I played in the series, so I really liked it. And then with Fable 3, we heard a lot of stories. I guess there was a little bit of trouble with the game development cycle of it. And I guess some of the things that they made as choices during the course of development didn't necessarily turn out to be the product that people were looking for. And even though I liked Fable 3, I had to admit I liked Fable 2 more than I actually liked Fable 3. And then later on, years later, I did the HD remake of Fable, and I got to play the whole series. Then Lionhead got fucked by Microsoft. And I'm going to 100% firmly stand by that statement that if Lionhead were just allowed to do whatever they do best, that they probably would still be making games to this day for Microsoft. But Microsoft fucked up everything with the launch of the Xbox One. They wanted to have everything around the Kinect. They wanted to have everything around motion, right? The Kinect and the Xbox One fucked everything. And I just want to say I'm so glad that the management responsible for those decisions during that era are fucking long gone from Microsoft because they're all gone at this point. But Lionhead was told your next game needs to be Kinect compatible. So they made a Kinect compatible Fable. No one played it. No one cared. Lost tons of fucking money. And Microsoft basically lost faith in the studio and ended up laying everyone off, even though they were heavily in development of another Fable game. That's the thing. They were really, significantly years into development of a new Fable game, and Microsoft cut the cord out from under them and laid them all off, which is fucked up because it's Microsoft's fucking fault that the game they made sucked because it had to be Kinect compatible, and no one wants motion controls. Period. You fucking daft idiots. No one ever fucking wanted them, but these idiots are so dumb. We gotta jump on the short-term money train bandwagon, and let's make a Kinect that's necessary, and you have to buy Xbox One with Kinect, and blah, 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 blah. Fuck you. Seriously, I hate executives who get so fucking excited about bullshit, and the yes men that tell them yes sir, because they're so afraid of losing their jobs instead of actually doing good for a company. Now we got a whole dev team that was laid off by Microsoft because someone at the top wouldn't tell that executive you're a fucking idiot. So anyway, I digress. Lionhead now works for Sony, at least a lot of the people. I hope they continue to make great games. I liked Fable. I would have loved to see Fable on one of these current-gen consoles with better graphics and bigger worlds and more capability to do stuff. I think the game would be successful, but they need to be allowed to do what they do best rather than told to do shit that they don't want to do. And I don't know. I don't even know how else to say. Like, how do you prove that these fucking controls are terrible? I mean, Heavy Rain devs forced to make their game compatible with the PS Move instead of making further DLCs for the game. It's a sad state. Thank God that we're past the motion control era. At least I hope so. The Nintendo NX is right around the corner. We don't know what the fuck that's going to be. Alright. Up next, from Cody Carls. He says, if you had to convince a new viewer to watch you, just based off of one playthrough you've done, which one would you tell them to watch? Genre doesn't matter. See, here's the thing. You can't say that, because genre does matter. The bottom line is, if you tell someone to watch my Heavy Rain playthrough, but they don't like narrative style of game, they want to see a game with like me overcoming challenges and doing difficult gameplay and stuff, they're going to watch that and be bored to fucking tears and say it's just a story. It's a narrative interactive story with someone giving... It's like watching Mystery Science Theater 3000, right? And they might hate that playthrough. The flip side, right, if you watch a game, maybe like a Dark Souls playthrough or a Grand Theft Auto playthrough, where there's a lot of gameplay, and I'm failing and I'm raging, and people don't like that. Maybe people like to not see rage in a playthrough. They're not going to like that, you know? Ultimately, it really is a subjective question. You can't have an objective answer to that question. But over the years, there have been playthroughs that I've done that I think people have kind of objectively said are good. For example, my playthrough of Heavy Rain, my recent playthrough of Until Dawn, playthroughs of certain games, like I would say maybe some of the Dark Souls have been pretty good. Also, I would say, you know, some of the original playthroughs that I did back in the day, right? You know, Mass Effect, Singularity, Mass Effect 2, a lot of people kind of still say to this day and age is one of my best ones. But again, it's all dependent on what you like. It is always going to be dependent on what you like versus, you know, because if you don't like the genre of game and you watch me play, it doesn't matter what commentary I do, you're still going to be turned off. You know what I mean? Unless you're there not for gameplay at all, you're just there to see, you know, comedy and a stand-up comedian, in which case, that's not what I do. There are plenty of YouTubers, that's what they do. They use games as their medium to be a comedian. That's not what I do. That's never been what I do. I try to entertain you when I play the game, but that's not the primary source. I'm trying to play the game and show you the game with my reactions to it, with commentary and such, and that's part of the experience, but I'm not there primarily to just use the game as a medium to portray comedy, okay? But ultimately, this wouldn't be a question for me. It would be a question for my longtime viewer base, and I would say, propose this question to those who've watched for quite a long time. So if you are a longtime viewer and you're watching this video, in the comments of the video, let everyone know these are the kind of the quintessential DSP playthroughs that he's done over the years that you should check out. And then if people have, like you said, if you have friends or whatever who don't know about me and you want to show them funny stuff, show them those playthroughs. I'm not the person to judge. It's you, the viewer, who needs to judge what's the good stuff for yourself. Okay? All right, next question is from Super Ghostfaced 101. He says, in 2012, you played Ratchet & Clank 1 and Jak and Daxter. 2 years later, in 2014, you played Ratchet & Clank 2, Going Commando, and Jak 2. Now that it is 2016, which is another 2 years later, are you going to keep the pattern going and play the final game in those collections when there's downtime? I'll tell you right now, I'm not playing Ratchet & Clank 3 because I just played Ratchet & Clank, the remake, which I still stand by my statement, it's not much of a remake when 90% of the content in the game was the original content from the game, the first game just kind of redone, and with a very, you know, I think there was one new planet and like one or two boss fights that were different. It's almost the same exact game. But no, I mean, I just played it. I really have no desire to play Ratchet & Clank now that I just played that game, okay? Jak 3 is always a possibility. We've got a summer coming up where I have absolutely no idea what will be going on during the summer. I think July, there's not even one single new release slated, which is kind of crazy when you start to think about it. There's no new releases this summer. You know, originally this summer was supposed to be good. There was supposed to be like multiple JRPGs and stuff coming out, and now they're all getting delayed. It's like, here we are back to the drawing board with the summer where there's nothing going on, you know, and I may have to do some different ideas, different downtime series and stuff. There have been some games people have been asking me to do for a while that maybe I'll kind of cram in as ongoing stuff. We'll see what happens, but Jak 3 is a possibility, but I'm not going to promise it for this summer. I would say Ratchet & Clank is out for now because I just played the remake, okay? Next question is from the President of the United States, ladies and gentlemen, Barack Obama. He says, now that you've officially beaten every single game in the series, can you definitely tell us which is your favorite From Software game and which is your least favorite and why? No. And I know a lot of people will be like, what? Why? You played them all. Why not? Here's why. Because I don't think I could fairly judge them, okay, until I were to, say, replay Dark Souls 1 now that I have all of the knowledge that I have about the series and I've learned how to actually play the games. Because the bottom line is, I played Dark Souls 1 at 2 different times. The first time was when the game was brand new, and I didn't play Demon Souls, and I understood nothing about the game engine. I didn't understand the combat, the crafting system, the leveling system. I understood almost nothing about this game. And I flubbed through it as much as I could to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, and I quit it. And then later on, I came back to it with the help of Stream Aid. People, you know, on a live stream were telling me, here's what you need to do. Here's what you didn't understand the first time. You need to go here. You need to get this weapon. This is a good idea. And that was kind of more hand-holding than anything else. I wouldn't call that, oh, I completed the game. No, that was people helping me. I was summoning people constantly to fight the bosses because I didn't really understand what to do. So yeah, no, in that regard, no, I don't really consider that a real playthrough. What that was kind of a mini start to a playthrough that failed, and then it was me just seeing the rest of the game. Almost like going on a world tour of Dark Souls rather than saying I beat Dark Souls. And quite honestly, being that the original game was, what, 5 some years ago, and then I replayed it or finished it 3 years ago, I would really have to replay that game from start to finish, now with the mechanics and the knowledge and the gameplay knowledge that I have now, to understand what is the best Dark Souls game. You know, when I started playing Dark Souls 3, I was saying I thought that Dark Souls 2 was better. Now I have to say definitively, no way, I think Dark Souls 3 is a much better game than Dark Souls 2. Demon Souls, I don't know. Again, that was 3 years ago, and even though I enjoyed it, I don't necessarily remember everything about it. So again, that might be, maybe I would need to replay Dark Souls 1 fully and maybe run through Demon Souls quickly to maybe give you a fair estimate, okay? Dark Souls 3 is up there, though, and Bloodborne's definitely up there, but I wouldn't want to say one thing and then I replay the game. I replay Dark Souls 1 one day and I'm like, fuck, this game's way good. Why did I not say that this was the best one? You know what I mean? So we'll see, but I can't give you a legitimate answer. It's been too long, and I certainly didn't have the frame of reference I have now to tell you about, like, Dark Souls 1, but maybe in the future. Alright. Next question is from Jatari. This is a question that tons of people have asked me. I've answered about it on Twitter and stuff, but let me give you a full answer right now. So here's the question. Phil, have you heard about the new PlayStation 4.5 that's codenamed Neo? It's supposedly a PS4 with upgraded internal specs. How do you feel about this and about the idea of a console going through the PC route? I think it's a sign that consoles could potentially have shorter life cycle spans and more frequent internal upgrade models. I think the deal is when they announced this, first of all, a lot of people were like, why? I really honestly believe that, because here's the deal, right? Game developers, when they develop games for consoles, okay, a lot of the times, the games don't necessarily perform as I think they were intended. I mean, let's take a look at some of the games over the past few years that ran at 30 frames per second or lower on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. And this is supposed to be the next generation of gaming, yet we can't even pump out 1080p video yet on a game console, which makes no sense because everything is 1080. You know, our television now is mostly 1080p. Everyone has 1080p TVs, and everyone expects this, right? People on PCs, high-end PCs, have been doing 1080p up to 1440p for years already. So the fact that our modern gaming consoles can't seem to do this is pretty ridiculous, in my opinion. Now, here's the deal. Do I think that because Sony is going to put out a new PlayStation 4 with better specs inside, that gaming is going to get better? You know, people are saying, oh, this is because they specifically want to design games now for this thing that are going to run at 4K resolution, or that they'll run 1080p 60 frames per second. I don't believe it. I'm sorry, call me the biggest skeptic on the planet. I don't believe it, because the bottom line is there's enough power in that PlayStation 4 to pump out 1080p 60 frames per second. There is. The hardware in there is good. The problem is the game devs are not utilizing it. They're not taking the time cycle that they need to properly utilize the hardware and put out a game that completely takes advantage of all of the things in that console. Because the publishers make them rush their games out as soon as possible. They don't have enough time. Take a look at a game like Assassin's Creed Unity. The game on its surface wasn't a bad game, but the game underperformed so poorly on the PlayStation 4, it was a laughingstock, and the company had to publicly fucking apologize. If that game had been given 1 to 2 more years of development, it could have been one of the best Assassin's Creeds ever made. It ended up being one of the worst because the game developer did not take the time to utilize the hardware properly. Do I think that just because Sony puts out a higher powered PlayStation 4, that the game devs are going to take advantage? No. I think you're going to see the same shit. You're going to see games come out, 1080p, and it runs at fucking 15 frames per second whenever there's more than 4 guys on the screen. And, 4K resolution, but the detail is terrible. It's not, I'm telling you, like, I don't understand why people flip out about stuff like this. It's not going to be a big deal. I don't really think it's going to be a big deal. If anything, what people are saying, see, everyone always said that for PCs to be top of the line, you have to constantly sink money into them. And the bottom line is, now you need to do that with consoles too, because now every 2-3 years they're going to release a new updated version of the same console. Here's the real important part about the whole situation. Just because Sony's releasing the new PlayStation 4 doesn't mean anyone's going to buy it unless they have an idea of why they should. Unless, when they announce this Neo, probably at E3 this year, unless they say, by the way, here's 25 games being exclusively designed for this console that are going to run beautifully on it, and we're promising you that they're going to run at high frame rate and high resolution. They're going to blow your mind with how good these games look. Unless they could do that, why would anyone buy this console? I wouldn't. Why would I sink another, because you know it's going to be like another $500 into the updated version of the PlayStation 4 with no promises? It's all about the games. If you can't promise me the games, I'm not going to buy the console to play the games on. I don't care about 4K resolution, fucking, Blu-ray discs or whatever. I could give two shits. Almost nothing supports it anyway. So, I don't care. And the bottom line is, I don't think the main consumer is not going to care. The mainstream consumer in the past 2 to 3 years just bought a new console, whether it was the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4. They're not ready to buy another one. I'm just throwing it out. They're not. They're not convinced, especially with the libraries of games that have come out for these consoles. There hasn't been nothing that's been like mind-numbingly, blowingly great to say that this is utilized what's been in these consoles. I'm not sold that the mainstream gamer is going to say, oh, I need to buy the new PS4. I don't think so. I think what's going to happen is, unless they can have a killer library of stuff that's only going to be on that new model, no one's going to buy this fucking thing. It'll be the early adopters, right? The people who absolutely need to have it, and that's it. And then what's going to end up happening is game developers are going to look and they're going to say, now wait a minute. We have an installed user base on the regular version of PS4, right? Millions of people worldwide have bought this console. If we release a game for it right now, potential is huge. And then you've got this new version of PS4 that maybe a couple 100,000, maybe 1 million people bought it. And if we release a game, we're already limiting our sales to whoever is the installed user base for that, which is going to be dramatically less. Why the fuck would a game developer throw all of their time and effort into developing a game for the new PS4, which has a much larger user base, or a much smaller user base? It doesn't make sense business-wise. So I don't understand what the point of this new console is. If this was 2-3 years down the line, and they were going to retire the PS4, and this was a new one, the PS5, okay. We're not there yet. We just released this thing, 2.5 years ago? It's not ready for a new one. It's just not. It doesn't make any logical sense. So, honestly, a lot of people with me were like, Phil, why didn't you make a big vlog about this? Phil, why didn't you rant about this? I think it's a non-story. I know a lot of people may disagree with me. I think it's a non-fucking story. I think this console is a pipe dream of someone at Sony. And what's going to end up happening is they will announce it. And a lot of games, there'll be a few, very small amount of game devs that'll develop for it. And the rest will be like, well, we're either going to go cross-platform for the high-powered and low-powered PS4, because there's no way we're going to eliminate this market share that we know we're going to buy our game. Or they're just going to say, forget the high-powered, we're just going to make games for this one, because everyone already has this one, and no one's buying the new one. Sorry, I think it's a terrible move by Sony, and I don't think it's going to be successful. That's just my opinion. Again, if you could show me a game dev who's trustworthy to utilize this new hardware and push it to its limits and let it actually have an amazing game, but I haven't seen one yet. We still got these new games releasing on consoles. They can't even run at 30 frames per second and 1080p yet. And you're going to tell me just because you put more hardware in the box that it's going to? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. All right, last question for this part, and then we'll take a break. And the rest of the questions will be answered in part 3. All right, so this question is from Atlas Telemon, and he says, Phil, you're currently partnered with Machinima, and so you're allowed to play Nintendo games on YouTube without any kind of issue about content ID match or anything like that. How do you see yourself sharing your experience in Zelda NX, which is going to be called Fields of Dawn, on YouTube? If you cover the game, it could take weeks of full-time gameplay to immerse yourself fully in the enormous world. Combined on and offline play, some parts are streamed, recaps, etc. I can't wait for you to play the new Zelda and to see if Nintendo does the NX right. How big of an impact do you think the new Zelda game will have for Nintendo in their future? If Zelda on NX fails, could this be game over for Nintendo as a console company? So first of all, if you don't know what Atlas Telemon is talking about, Nintendo just released this past week information finally about the new Zelda. First of all, they said E3 this year they're not going. They're not going to be there. Great. There will be a press conference thing, what do they call Nintendo Direct, during E3. It's going to be all about the new Zelda, Fields of Dawn. And that's it. They're not even going to release info on their new Nintendo console, the NX. All they're saying is that the NX is being released in March of 2017. And now, zip, they're keeping their lips tightly shut until later this year when they're ready to present info on it, okay? So E3 is basically Zelda, and that's it for Nintendo. We'll hear nothing else. Great. Now, the reason a lot of people are up in arms about this is because they promised that the Wii U's life cycle was not over yet and they were going to continue development of it, but now that means that there's really nothing coming out for the Wii U at all this year. Zelda was the big one, but now it's been delayed till March 2017 as well, so that it could also launch simultaneously from the Wii U and the NX. And a lot of people are like, what gives Nintendo? You basically have blatantly lied to us yet again, said you would support the Wii U, and now you're basically dropping it like a hot fucking rock for this NX in March. Now, we can talk about that at length. I'm not going to talk about that yet because I think someone actually asked that direct question later, all right? But in regards to Zelda, all right, supposedly it's supposed to be, again, the biggest Zelda ever. It's going to, span the biggest world map. It's going to have the most content, an open world. It's immersive. You can get lost in. Okay. Do I really believe that Zelda is going to have as immersive a world as a game as, say, The Witcher 3? Nope. Nope. I don't think so. Just because the map is big doesn't mean that it's going to have a ton of worthwhile content. And I don't believe that. I think that this Zelda will have a lot of content. It may have the most content of every Zelda game so far. I don't think it's going to be as big as Witcher 3. And, Witcher 3 was last year. So you're talking 2017, a game that probably won't even have as big of a reach or as big of amount of content as a game that was released 2 years prior. Nintendo does things differently than everyone else. They really do. I'm sure that when this Zelda game comes out, it'll be super polished. It won't have a lot of bugs or anything. It'll be consistent frame rate. The gameplay will be solid. But I don't think it's necessarily going to do something so insanely groundbreaking and different from other Zeldas. I mean, how different have Zeldas been over the years? Maybe there's a new... Wind Waker had water, so you were on a ship. Twilight Princess, you could turn into a dog temporarily. But when you really look at these things, were they any massively different? Did they change the core game? No. So I'm sure this Fields of Dawn will have some core gameplay elements that are a little different. Yes, it might have a bigger map and more content. Do I really think it's going to take me weeks to beat the game? No. I think that if I tackle it like any other Zelda game, that I'll probably be able to beat it within 2 to 3 weeks, especially if I'm doing it at least every other day as either a major stream or maybe I do it as a secondary stream at night. I don't think this is going to be a game that's going to take me 100 years to beat. I just don't. Just based off of the Zeldas that I've played, even Skyward Sword, which took a while, didn't take me insanely long to beat. So no matter what Nintendo tells me, I don't believe them. That they say, it's going to be the biggest, it's going to take out so many hours of content, whatever. I don't believe it. Sorry, I'm skeptical of Nintendo at this point because they've lied to us so many times, okay? Now, how big of an impact is Zelda going to have for Nintendo? I think it will be huge because Nintendo right now is in dire straits. Whether or not they want to admit it and whether or not it's financially, they are in dire straits as a game developer because they are between a rock and a hard place. They're stuck with this Wii U, this underpowered console that cannot push out games of the quality that the gamers want anymore. And they know this. They know this, and they know that they need to do something drastic. So, they claim they're not gonna, we're not dropping the support for Wii U, but, by the way, the one game that you wanted for Wii U is now delayed until next year, so it could also be released on the new console that we're selling at the same time, incidentally. What a coincidence, right? No, it's a sure sign that the Wii U is dead. That there may be a couple more games for that console, but for the most part, that game is done. All the big AAA titles you're going to want are going to be on the new Nintendo console, the NX, and the Wii U is now a paperweight that you can throw out, which I did on video 2 years ago. And quite honestly, between the few games that I've played on it that were actually good, I don't really think I missed out on too much if I had thrown it out 2 years ago. But I digress. The bottom line is, Nintendo needs to have an insanely great game, a must-play for everyone. Not just for the Nintendo fan, but for everyone. And this has been Nintendo's problem for the past 5+ years. Look at the games on the Wii and the Wii U that they claim are the must-play. Another Mario platformer, another Mario Kart. Oh, look, a new Donkey Kong. Oh, look, it's going through the motions. And the few new IPs that they've had, okay, really, Wonderful 101 flopped huge, just like I fucking knew it would. No one listened to me because they're all Nintendo fanboys. No one fucking played that game. The mainstream buyer did not care about Wonderful fucking 101, and that's why it was such a sales flop. And even games, really, that have kind of made the Wii U start to appeal to a bigger audience, like Pokken Tournament, right? Did anyone really run out and buy a Wii U to play Pokken Tournament specifically? I don't think so. I think it was more like, well, we had a Wii U and there's no fighters for it. Oh, this is a good one. Let's play it. And that's kind of the problem with the Wii U and with Nintendo in general for the past 5+ years. There's nothing that's been on a Nintendo console that if you didn't play it, you missed out on a crazy, unique, fun, and just a must-play gameplay experience, right? Name one Nintendo game that wasn't one of their tried-and-true IPs that's been around forever, that's been rated as like the top 10 games of the year. That's the problem. If you're already a fan of Nintendo, you're playing their games, but if you're not, what's your incentive to buy a Nintendo console or play a game? With the NX, Nintendo needs to do this. They need to convince the mainstream gamer that in March 2017, they need to buy the Nintendo NX, they need to play the new Zelda, and whatever other games are going to be coming out for the NX as they announce them, and not that it's just more of the same shit that we shovel down your throat every time there's a new Nintendo console. They need to show you definitively why you need to spend money on this console, because the bottom line is, people have lost faith with Nintendo as a game developer, and people who bought the Wii U feel burned that they bought that console and there was next to no third-party support. The first-party games that came out for it were just more of the same, and it really was a console that was barely used for most people. They need to now feel that if they're going to invest more money in Nintendo, that Nintendo's going to focus on games and not, oh shit, well we fucked up again with the NX, let's just sell more amiibos. Because that's the bottom line. Nintendo failed as a game developer in the past 5 years, and said, well, we need a way to make up all the money we lost. Let's just sell a little action, little collectible figures. And they made a ton of money on those. But that's not going to get gamers back. Maybe collectors and, you know, fanboys of Nintendo. That's not going to get the gamers back to come fucking play the games and buy the NX. They need to find a point. When they start showing definitive shit about Zelda, that better be the best fucking game we've ever seen from Nintendo. Like, if it's not, I don't know what's going to happen, and I feel so bad saying that. I've said it a million times, I'm a fan of Nintendo. Not a fanboy, but a fan of Nintendo. And I hate the way that they've gone, and I want to see them turn around, and they have to do something different. This better literally be the best Zelda game ever. The most content, innovation, graphically, everything. It better be fucking holy shit, must play. Whether you're a fan of Nintendo or not, you must play the new Zelda. Because if it's not, I don't know what's going to happen to this company. Or maybe I do. Just saying. Alright. Time for a break, and then we'll have the final part of Ask the King. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll be back shortly with part 3. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.